30 seconds.
We were Black Hawk and the White Wing.
That's the
Okay. Well, we're gonna have to hope that this works then.
She's live.
Okay. Is it all right if I sit in this chair here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. And grab it now.
30 seconds.
Just making sure the video is ready. Are we live? Are we ready? Maybe not. Are you ready, Pete? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go ahead and get started now that we know that things are ready to go. My name is Jody, and I'm the election official of the City of Orem and the City Recorder. I'd like to welcome you out tonight to our candidate debate for Mayor and City Council. Oh, hello. Mayor and City Council candidates. Tonight, we have a moderator that has been gracious enough to help us out this evening. Curtis graduated from BYU with a Bachelor's of Arts in the College of Humanities. He is a community advocate, entrepreneur, and business acclimist. He assembles and transitions business raw materials such as time, money, and personnel to foster dynamic teams and generate profitable companies. He has led 5 companies to multi-million-dollar status, including growing a marketing company from 0 to 15 million in 6 years, and has placed 2 companies on Utah's top 10 listing. He could choose to spend his days, tell me if I get this right, glunching, if you don't know what that is. That is his word for playing a round of golf and having lunch all in the same afternoon. So he would prefer to glunch, but instead he took on a role that others shook their heads at. He became CEO and president of the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce during the height of the COVID last year. The organization was struggling and at a crossroads, and this seasoned executive brought his mentorship and track record to the organization. He's an active volunteer and leader at SUU and UVU. An acquaintance of him told us of 3 things that he respects about Curtis. One is that he gets the big picture and he doesn't get lost in the minutia. He genuinely cares about getting the job done right the first time, and he cares about developing the people who work around and with him professionally and personally. Please help me welcome the president and CEO of the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce, Curtis Blair.
Well, that was awesome, as if I needed an opportunity to endorse myself amongst our illustrious candidates here. That was a wonderful opening. I appreciate that, Jody, and thank you for organizing our session and our evening so that we could hear from our candidates today. We appreciate you all being in attendance as well as we review the things that matter most. And I know that among those things are the future of our valley, and especially our city, the city of Orem. I'm confident that the principles and values that got us here are the same ones we need to pivot to and rely on and remember and implement to get us to the next 30, 40 years. And so with that, we will spend some time talking about what that looks like according to our candidates here. We have candidate for Mayor Dave Young and Jim Evans. These questions that I have received have been vetted, but they have all been submitted by citizens of Orem. And I think that as you go through these, they'll be a little bit real, a little bit raw and relevant, I think, to our conversation today. And we appreciated those members of our community that wrote their thoughts and the feelings from their heart as we review these questions. And so Candidate Young, Candidate Evans, welcome to tonight's debate. And we look forward to hearing from you as we review these questions. As an opening, we'll give you 1 minute to give your name and tell us something unique about the city of Orem. And we know that it's its people, like that is a common thread. And so in addition to the wonderful residents that are here, and we'll start with Candidate Young, what makes Orem so unique? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Dave Young, and my wife and I have lived here for 31 years. We've got 5 kids, 10 grandkids, and Orem's our home. And it's been a great place to raise a family. And the reason I'm running for mayor is because things have been changing the last 10 years, and they've been moving towards high density and lots of traffic. And that's not the Orem that I raised my
30
family
seconds.
in. And so that's why I'm running, is to try, and those are the main things. There's a lot of things, and there's a path to get there to bring Orem back to the track that it used to be on. And that's what I'm going to be working towards.
Great, thank you. Candidate, yes, I agree. Wonderful. Candidate Evans.
Thank you for being here and moderating for us tonight. My name is Jim Evans, and my wife Tana and our family has lived in Orem for 35 plus years. As I see some of my neighbors and friends here and others in the community, I think the reason that we live here is because of the quality of life we have here. One of the things that's really unique about Orem, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this tonight, is the wonderful economic development that we have. There's a lot of cities around this state and this valley itself
30 seconds.
that would kill to have, just die to have what we have here in Orem in terms of what we're able to do with our sales tax. And it's increased every year and a whole bunch for the last several years. And so I think that's very unique about us, because not all the cities can say that. And we need to protect that. One of the reasons I'm running, besides the quality of life and the way we have quality of life to pay for fire and police and all those things, is to have great economic development, the sales tax revenues to help keep our property taxes down. If we didn't have the sales tax revenues, we'd be paying a lot more property tax. So that's probably a good start for right now. Thanks.
Wonderful, thank you. Round of applause. Well, let's talk a little bit about property taxes, and maybe we can begin our conversation about housing. Candidate Young, what does affordable housing mean to you, and what plans do you have specifically for promoting more affordable housing?
Affordable housing is probably one of the most difficult issues there is. It's one of the most difficult issues to realistically solve, because we don't live in a world where we control the prices of the assets. We're a free market society. And so as such, the market sets those prices. Apartments don't seem to be the answer, because a 3-bedroom apartment over at the mall costs $2,500 a month. So that doesn't really
30
help
seconds.
the affordability. As far as things that you could actually do, is you could work you could work into the neighborhoods, help them organically redevelop. You have home flippers that come in and basically upgrade areas by buying them and fixing them up and making them affordable. The development of townhomes and different projects like that, where you got a lower cost. But realistically,
Time.
that's a really tough thing to do.
Yeah, it's not any one city's problem to solve, is it? Candidate Evans, the same question. What does affordable housing mean to you, and how will you address it?
So affordable housing means having places where our kids and grandkids and people that decided that they're on a fixed income and don't want to be able to, have the house in the yard, but want to live in Orem still, the benefits of Orem, the affordable housing means a house they can afford. I think one thing I would do, and I would use my relationships with, I've been on a number of committees and boards throughout the years in the Valley, and know a lot of the players on this, their mayors and others, and I'd work with them to talk about how are we fair we need to get together
30
through the
seconds.
mayors that are part of Mountain Land Association of Governments and discuss how do we deal with affordable housing, not push it from my city to your city. Vin, you're going to have it all. I'm not going to have any pro, you're going to have it all. That's really something we need to do together. And that's something that I think I can offer on this or any other issue, is just my ability to work with a lot of these other players. I've done it for a number of years and I have an ability to go to the table. They trust me and I think they will listen to me. And that's something I try to do. I also try to work with developers in the appropriate areas that are zoned for this type of housing to come in. There's in Salt Lake, they do some of this where they actually get grants to put in some housing that's more affordable for people. And I would work with some of them to try to help them come to the city and have
Thank
the
you,
zones so they
candidate.
could do that. So
Thank you.
thanks.
Very good. Well done. Appreciate the timekeeper. Thank you for the moment. So how do we manage the growth then? If in fact, growth is coming and we know that's not a variable. And candidate Young, you mentioned that we need to look at apartments as a possible solution, but that's not going to solve it. You mentioned townhomes. And in your earlier statement, you said that high density and traffic are two of your greatest concerns. How can you have both? How can you have the tremendous growth that we're experiencing and still maintain low traffic and not look at affordable homes as part of the solution? How can you marry the two?
Well, I didn't say we're not looking at affordable homes as part of the solution. It's a complete solution, but we have to decide who we're going to be when we grow up. I mean, we've got 100,000 people here right now. Is our target 150,000, 200,000? I mean, but what's happening to us organically right now is we're at 43% apartments, or not apartments, but rentals, 43% rentals. And a lot of that takes away from the Family City USA program that we've been working for. And so it's not it's a matter of defining what we want to be instead of just letting it happen. Right now, it's just letting it happen. And the path to letting it happen is where we're going, is the city, from everything I've heard and seen, wants to have 20,000 people living on State Street. And if they want 20,000 people living on State Street, that means it's filled up with apartments. And they want to turn the bus, the UVX, and turn it down State Street. And so if that's what we want, then by all means, let's do it. But that's what's going to happen to us if we don't have another plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I would propose putting together another plan, a completely another plan, where we have service, retail, we have office, we use State Street as a corridor, we really build up small business, and we overhaul the look and feel of State Street, but we don't do it with 20,000 people living on State Street. I mean, if you want to imagine that, in 2010, Vineyard had 145 people. Today, Vineyard has 17,000 people. So if you want to envision where we're going, is just move Vineyard onto State Street. And that's a visual that is where we're headed, unless we plan differently than the plan that Jim's talking about.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So candidate Evans, I mean, you know, it's hyper growth. That's what we're experiencing. And candidate Young highlighted a perfect example of that in a neighboring city that is not just but minutes away. Given hyper growth, how can we in fact manage that growth to maintain the quality of life?
I believe there was an attempt to do that when the State Street Master Plan, I wasn't, on the council or part of that at the time, as I've gone back and studied that 190 plus page document. I think the current council and neighbors are finding out that there's some adjustments that need to be made on that plan. And once again, there were hundreds of people that worked on that, business community, citizens, elected officials, UDOT, UTA, all those, and they thought it was a good plan, and they're finding that there's some adjustments that need to be made. So I support the current council moratorium to step back and look at that. And as Mr. Young said, determine really what needs to be changed. I'm not in favor of throwing the plan out because I think there's some good concepts of it, but I think it needs to be adjusted. Things such as the height, for example, they talked about if you have a lot of height, that brings a lot of people there. And we talked about maybe having less height, having more parking per unit, and then looking at what other areas of the city outside of the residential areas that you can have those more housing go into. So I support one way to control that growth is not having as much of that on State Street, not saying not having any on State Street, because you want to put the multi-family housing, high density housing, where there's public transportation. be that Geneva Road, State Street, for wherever that is. And so that's one thing I propose that we go back and revisit that. And I support the moratorium right now to revisit that.
We're going to get to the moratorium here in just a minute. While you have the mic, Candidate Evans, what measures will you take to prevent government expansion, given that some of the state legislators proposed bills on things such as building and zoning?
Number one is would be very active in working and meeting with them to let them know what the needs are of Orem. They need to understand and be partners with us. UDOT needs to be partners, UTA needs to be partners, the legislature, they all need to be partners to understand our needs here and not just say, this is what we're going to do. In theory, when we talk about traffic, that's one of the things you said, we have a lot of state highways in Orem, and we can either sit back and let these highways just do what they want through the state, or we can actually be a partner with them and go to the table and say, let's talk about how we can have solutions together. A good example of that is 1600 North, where the city and the state work together to say, we probably need to have the state help us with this to control the traffic from the freeway to State Street. And that was one good example where the state said, okay, and the legislators, let's take over that from Orem and help them so we can do that. It would take Orem forever to build that out, but the state has the resources to do that. That's one example of going to the table as partners. And I propose we do that with the legislature before that we just sit back and let it happen.
Thank you, Candidate Evans. Appreciate that. So same question for Candidate Young. Building and zoning. How do we assist the legislation and not let them overreach?
Yeah, the only way that we can really deal with that is to work with the legislation. I mean, it's coming from the state level.
Yeah.
So we have to work with our legislators, and we have to be proactive as a mayor and a city council in letting them know the direction that we want to go. And most importantly, and this ties into it all, we've got to represent the people. I mean, as a mayor and city council, we're here to represent the people. And I just want to give an example of an agreement that I got that makes it very, very difficult to represent the
30
people.
seconds.
This is an agreement from the mall. The mall sent this out. It defined itself as whereas University Place is a mixed-use development is zoned and approved for 700,000 square feet of office space, 1.2 million square feet of retail space, 1,800 housing units. Essentially, they're defining who they are. And then in order to put our signs on their property, we had to sign an agreement that says candidate acknowledges, supports, and agrees with the development proposition set forth in the recitals and agrees to support the continued development of University Place. Now that agreement really ties our hands to be able to do what we need to do to represent the people, because it is essentially assigning that right to a University Place. And this is a legally binding contract. And it's a real problem because we're supposed to represent the people.
Yeah, thank you, candidate.
Can I give a
We're gonna-
response to that?
We're gonna, thank you. Candidate Evans will give you 30 seconds to rebut.
Thank you. So when I reviewed that agreement that they ask in the tenants, I went back and looked at the same exact tenants that we as a council back in December of 2013 put into place with University Place, with the Woodburys, to say that we're going to support these principles that are talked about in this most recent campaign sign agreement. And so what I was doing by signing and reading that, it was exactly in sync with this agreement that I actually signed. I mean, my name's on here in December when that's the last thing I signed as mayor in 2013. It's the agreement with University Place in the city to let all these things happen in that zone. And so I was just being true to what I signed, saying, yeah, I continue to support the
Thank
tenants
you.
of a thing that's already in place.
Thank
So
you. Thank you, Candidate Evans. Thank you for that. We talked about the moratorium earlier.
Can I respond to that or no?
You'll actually have your chance here. Should the city council, Candidate Young, have placed a new moratorium on building regardless of the potential liabilities and lawsuits?
The city should have absolutely placed a moratorium on the development. What was going on was on 1600 North. Those citizens all rose up and were fighting and dealt with that for 9 months. Spent thousands of their own dollars trying to protect themselves against what was happening to them. As soon as that was done, 2 days later, magically another, I don't even know the number, 340 or 430 unit development was proposed on the Meadow Goat property. And as soon as that's done, there'll be another one. And so
30 seconds.
that was going against the citizens and what they want. And the citizens were very actively against that. And I think there should absolutely be a moratorium because the current design of State Street Master Plan is going to allow that to keep happening and happening. We need to take a step back, figure out what's right and what's wrong with State Street Master Plan and deal with that.
Thank you. Very good.
And-
I'm going to come. And I'm going to come back to you about a follow-up to that. Candidate Evans, you mentioned earlier that you supported the moratorium.
Okay.
Tell us
I'm going
more.
to say maybe I'll differ a little on that. I support the moratorium, but if we found out that it's going to cost the citizens millions and millions and millions of dollars and our taxes going up, we need to be realistic on when we put a moratorium in place. I support it, but I'm not going to say at all costs because I'm a taxpayer and I once again, now a fixed income and I don't want my income to go, but taxes to go up. So I support the moratorium because that's the citizens talk to the council and that's what they wanted to do. But I just say my difference is not at all costs because I'm a taxpayer and I want to be careful. I want to be a wise steward of the city's dollars because there's only so many to go around for the
seconds.
parks and the roads and all the other things. So
Is this a technique that you believe that that you would use or should be used in the future? A moratorium?
it's an appropriate technique, but you want to make sure, I want to get with city staff and get the ramifications of what's the potential liability for us before I went up and made the vote. But I support what they have in place right now. I just would say I want to know what the ramifications were and what the all cost, what that really is.
Thank you. Candidate Young, what do you think about this tool as a technique? Yes, yes.
Yeah, obviously you wouldn't do this at all costs. If it was going to really cost you millions of dollars, you wouldn't do it. It wouldn't make any sense. But it does make sense to stand up as a council when we feel that something's wrong coming from a developer. And just like this agreement where we're agreeing to do whatever University Place wants within these parameters. What is there? There's 670 or so apartments that have been developed over there. That was originally supposed to be a mixed use development. It's 100% high density apartments right now. They're at 670. This agreement talks about going to 1,800. This agreement
30
negates
seconds.
our ability to do anything about that. And it's not to say whether or not we would stop it or let it go, but why would we give away our right to represent the people?
Thank you. Candidate Young, if memory serves, you mentioned UVX coming down State Street. There are mentions of that Orem State will be adopting a rapid transit bus lane. Do you support this and how do you feel it will affect traffic? Will it actually help or will it not help the traffic situation that we have?
You asking me?
Yes.
No, I'm completely against the bus rapid transit coming down State Street. To do that, they'd have to widen the road at least 20 feet. They'd have to take out probably 20% of the existing businesses. And that bus is currently empty most of the time when I drive by it. I know in mornings and evenings, it runs from BYU to UVU, but it takes out two dedicated lanes of traffic. And essentially you redesign your entire street around a bus that's empty a high percentage of the time. And that just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, why not just have,
30
let's start out with
seconds.
buses. The buses can go up and down State Street. If they become full, we can add more buses, but to make dedicated lanes at this point in the progression of that makes zero sense. And Jim would know a lot about that because he's a UDOT commissioner and works with that. So I'm sure I'd be happy to hear what he has to say.
So no, not in favor of rapid transit
I'm
model.
I'm at this point, I'm not in favor of putting it in as you're 15 years early.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. A couple things on that.
Yes,
On the numbers, on the UVX, when it was, and obviously it went down when COVID took place and people, weren't going to work and things like that, but it went from about 4,000 riders to about 12,000 plus riders that were on that same 4,000 on the bus line was there to 12,000 plus on the other. And at the time, it was, we figured it was about 5% reduction automobiles that were on that where the UVX goes. So on that, but let me go to State Street. I've seen the
30
plans, the
seconds.
theory plans that were in the business plan, the State Street plan. And I've actually been out there with a tape measure with folks measuring these are theory plans. and we aren't losing 23 feet along there. I've had to take measure myself, but what I can tell you is this. Right now, the process for that is it's a long ways away from deciding if we even do that. First of all, working with Mountain Land Association of Governments, right now they're determining through a consultant which segment they're going to actually do the environmental study on.
Time.
And that'll happen in about a year, this year. And then a 2 to 3 year process after that once to decide is it the Orem segment, the Lehigh segment, the Provo segment. Then there's
Thank
going to be
you.
another two-year, planning process to determine how will the impact be on businesses.
Do you think
once-
it'll affect traffic?
will affect traffic, not if it's done right, it won't. But that's why you have the experts that work on that. I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
I've been on the transportation, not the UTA commission. I've been the UDOT that does highways, I'm not the commission that does the buses, but I know that there's a lot of planning and input from the citizens, the business that has to take place for several years before you would even determine to do that. So that was a concept, but it's not decided that's going to happen yet. So I wanted to just state that.
Thank you. Thank you. Candidate Young, how are we going to move the people then? Orem is what, 92% built out, right? We're becoming landlocked.
Right.
How are we going to move the people? Because you will see, as we have seen past his prologue, a number of people moving into the Orem area, and they're looking for places to live, and they've got to get to work. They've got to get to school. What ways, as you look at so much of Orem already developed, how do you feel that further growth or development will take place? How do we manage that growth and when it relates to getting people that are moving in around the city?
Well, we definitely don't do a UVX bus because it doesn't go all around the city. It wouldn't take them where they want to go. But as far as to go back to that question, how do we do it? Well, the first thing we do is we set a strategic vision for where we want to be. We don't just have unlimited growth. We don't put 20,000 people on state streets and apartments. We don't have every business that tries to build a new structure push to put apartments on top of their building. We do things that make sense. Like I said in the beginning, we have to decide who we want to be when we grow up. And if we don't have a plan, then we
30
will just
seconds.
become a conglomerated mess. But if we have a plan, we can get there. And if you go around the valley, I mean, like I said, we've got 43% apartments. What about Mapleton? What about Highland? What about Alpine? I would say, let's have a plan that the entire county takes their fair share of the apartments and they aren't all thrown into Orem. I mean, because back to the issue, which is we're supposed to represent the citizens. And I've been talking to lots of people and I haven't met anyone who said, I'd really like
Thank
to have
you.
more apartments and more traffic.
Yeah. Well, you hit on so you hit on a very interesting topic. And you bring in the county, and as of course, my role as the Utah Valley Chamber. I'm in council meetings from Lehigh to Eagle Mountain to Saratoga. And each city has that same mentality. Not here. We need to lean elsewhere. There's an acronym for that. I bet you know it. NIMBYism. Not in my backyard.
NIMBY.
So where does Orem sit with that posture of not in my backyard?
Well, so if we're going to do not in my backyard, let's talk about, we've got 43% rentals. I mean, Highland, Alpine, American Fork, all the rest don't have anywhere near that. So before we start putting more in our backyard, let's put more in their backyard. I mean, let's make it fair. Let's make it equitable. Why doesn't it all need to be crammed in Orem? I mean, that's not what the people want. The people I talk to every day, they do not want that. So that's all I'm saying. Let's have it be a county plan and put it everywhere. And then once
30
everybody else
seconds.
gets to 43%, we'll raise it to 45 or whatever they say we have to. But right now, there's no sense us taking the brunt of all that growth.
Thank you. Candidate Evans, what is your response? What is your response to that?
Can you repeat that again? I didn't quite hear that.
Well, the question is, as we address Orem's issues, part of the solution as presented by candidate Young is that we lean on other cities around us to do their fair share. Is that a fair repeat? What is your position on that? We call that in the industry not in my backyard or NIMBYism. What is your response to
And I
that?
mentioned, I think earlier, that part of what I think I can bring to the table as mayor is over the many years, people that have worked with me know that I'm reasonable and they like to work with me and come to the table and solve issues. Albeit having been on the Alpine School Board, the city council, the hospital board, a lot of different things, they know that I bring people together. And when I said earlier, that's what I suggested. I agree with what he said on this one, that we need to get together through Mountain Land, which brings all the mayors together. They have a monthly planning meeting and they plan about the future. And this should be a topic that group works on, is to
30
determine how
seconds.
can we, spread this across. But one thing that's going to happen is we want to make sure that we do it in a way that they don't just want to ram the thing down our throat. We want to have some say on what should happen. If it was to come down the road, we don't want to have the thing in the middle of the median like Provo has. It won't allow people to turn into businesses. So we need to be a player at the table and give our input on what we want or don't want with the other mayors. So.
Thank you, candidate. You mentioned businesses, and that's very near and dear to my heart, especially those that reside in the Provo-Orem district and countywide. Businesses are depending on appropriate and common sense policies. Candidate Evans, start with you. What do you think is at greatest risk for businesses, knowing that we're about to experience and have for the last 18 months, what I call hyper growth?
Two things. One, an economic development expert the other day at the Utah Valley Chamber, your forum up at Sundance.
We invited Spendlove, Robert Spendlove.
Yeah, and Brandon Fugel even, who also, he talked about, once again, how Orem is so well positioned right now, Orem and Lehigh in the Valley, and Orem's one of the places where people want to come. When I've talked to people that run University Place and others, they've said they get calls from cities all around the country saying, can we come visit and see, how are you doing this? Ours are dying. Yours aren't dying. And if you don't know this, we get about 20+% of our sales tax revenue from between Costco and University Place. So, we get 50% or so from businesses 50 or over, 50% for businesses with 50 employees or under. They're all important. And so what we need to do is spend our time working with all of them, make sure the taxes on businesses, for example, one thing I've committed to do is to get in a look at the structure on what we tax our businesses on when they do a business in Orem. Is it fair? Are there some things we can loosen up and not do anymore? How do they compare to the others in the city and the county as well? And so
Thank you.
once again, they're all important. A big one or a small one, they're all important, and we need to spend equal time with all of them.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you. So your thoughts about that, candidate Young? Businesses are looking at an opportunity to expand and grow. They will want to be a part of the Orem community. Given that we have hyper growth and we have a legislative session around the corner, beginning in January, how can we balance common sense policies to manage hyper growth to the benefit of businesses?
Yeah, as far as businesses, that's a whole different conversation. But I mean, I think our business corridor is State Street, and State Street is a problem right now because I've had several friends that have tried to do different developments on State Street, not high density, but just businesses. And they constantly run into all kinds of roadblocks. I mean, just endless. I was just talking to a guy today. He said as he was trying to do his development, he had all of his finished costs. By the time he went through everything the city wanted him to do, he was $25,000 or $250,000 over budget. And he said if he didn't really want to be here, he would have just packed up and left. So I think there's a ton of uncertainty on what State Street is. And I'm an investor, and from an investment standpoint, unless you have certainty and you know what you're dealing with, you're not going to put money there. If we can get certainty on State Street and have it for service, retail, office, and plan it out and get away from this giant high density vision, then I think business could thrive because they would have certainty and they know what they were going to do.
Thank you. Thank you, candidate.
One last question before we close.
As each of you are considering your candidacy, and of course you've had a chance to review the strategic plan, I'm hearing from you about what's not working. as part of your platform. I can appreciate that, because that's how we begin to figure out what needs to be solved. For each of you, starting with candidate Young, what's not in the strategic plan right now that needs to be? What single specific item do you recommend as a part of that strategic plan as a proactive approach to solving these problems?
Pretty much just what I previously said. I think it needs an emphasis on service, retail, and office, and move away from high density. I think the master plan needs to be completely relooked at because it's not meeting the needs of the citizens. Just what the State Street Master Plan did initially is it essentially rezoned that entire area and 4 blocks into some areas where it's affecting neighborhoods. And it was done with one fell swoop. And so you didn't have citizen input on all those areas. And that's why you've got the big conflict right now. So we really have, and in my mind, we have to go back and completely revisit and potentially completely upgrade it, because I don't think it's aligned with what the citizens want. And that's why I'm running, is to represent those citizens.
Thank you, candidate.
Candidate Evans, the same question. So
For lack of a better phrase, it's easy to be an armchair quarterback. Tell us what is missing in Orem's strategic plan that would make a difference for this community.
So first of all, say on the Orem State Street Master Plan, I've gone through and looked at the book this thick of all the public hearings and the meetings they held. And everyone isn't happy with what happened on that, but there was a lot of good input into that. And that's why right now the moratorium, which I support, goes back. Let's look what needs to be fixed on that. Do we need to say a business doesn't need to have, high density on top? And I think that's probably something that needs to be looked at. That's not a requirement right now. It is if they want to go to those pods. So I agree with, I think what's missing is going back and looking at that and what needs to be improved on that plan. But I don't say throw the whole plan out. The reason I don't say that is because, my gosh, we're getting $26 million a year in sales tax. From only 20% comes for the University Place issue, some on the Parkway and some on State Street. They're all important. And so to say we're going to redo it all, that doesn't say that it's not all working. There's some issues, maybe transportation, high density, some things, but not everything's wrong with that, with what we're doing in Orem. And so my goal is, if I'm elected mayor, is to come in and build upon those things, work with the citizens as my counterpart has said here, to fix some of those things, but I don't think everything needs to be changed on it. So
Thank you, candidate. Not long ago, I had the chance to tour some of the staging areas at the Sarah. And for as long as I've lived in this community, I never knew what Sarah stood for until that tour. Orem has a tremendous legacy in history. It was the center of culture for the state for many years, and the center of tremendous growth. And I think that many of those individuals that built this city from its grassroots up have pivoted to those values and principles. What is your vision for maintaining the history of Orem and acknowledging those values and principles while preparing for the future? Let's begin with candidate Evans, and then we'll conclude with candidate Young.
So vision to keep the great history, cultural history. I think first of all, and I can say this is easy because I've been a big champion of those things you just talked about, the SARE and all those. We've not only say we like those, we get people to donate because the government can't do it all. People have to be a part of that and support that. And I think we need to continue to do what we can. The care tax is great. I love the care tax and that helps a lot. But it also takes people like we're in this room to step up to the plate and say, we love living here. We love the value of these things in our life and what we can do to support these types of programs and initiatives. Recreation is another great one. My kids played in the basketball programs and the baseball programs and so forth. And we need to continue to make sure we have the taxes, sales tax base to cover for the parks and the ball fields and things like that. So our grandchildren in the future can continue to use those things that we have, their legacy. Those are all important to us culturally, as well as, so the recreation things, the cultural arts thing, I'd be very strong in supporting those. And which once again, it goes back to keeping our sales tax, our tax base strong, doing things to make it easy to do business. We're doing good things now. We want to have businesses like Trader Joe's and all Dillard's and all these other ones want to come to Orem, there ought to be something that's going on. They must think it's good to be here. But what do we continue to do to keep that strong, which then we're able to support the other things, which are part of our wonderful cultural heritage here.
Thank you. Name a value or a principle, candidate Evans, that you would continue to espouse. Just one word, one or two words, a value or principle that you would
Value?
continue to espouse as we grow for the future.
Listening.
Listening.
And that could be both to the businesses and the citizens.
Thank
So
you.
listening.
Okay, thank you very much. Candidate Young. There's a tremendous culture here and it's worth preserving. In fact, it's probably why many of our citizens here are here today, is to know which candidate will best reflect those values and principles of where Orem is going. How do we preserve that legacy for the future generations?
I think that's a great question. And I think that's what I've been describing tonight is how we do that. The way we do that in my mind is we get our traffic under control, we get our high density intrusion under control, and we move towards doing what Orem's always been, which is Family City USA. And when I look at that and you ask me, what do I want to do? Well, my value is pretty simple. And I've said this since the beginning, so this plays into what I believe. But as far as deciding what to do and how to make the next decision, what do we do about this? What do we do about that? If it promotes Family City USA, I'm for it. If it takes away from Family City USA, I'm against it. And so that's my overarching value. It's very simple. And I'm not, contrary to kind of what's been alluded here, I'm not to blowing up everything and coming back and fixing it. We've got all kinds of really good things here. What we've done is we've taken a slight turn in the wrong direction. We just need to correct that by doing the things I'm talking about. And that's where we need to go.
Thank you. Same final question, which is what one word describes the value that you feel we need to espouse in Orem? Family City USA is too many. I need one.
One word. Well, it's hard to do it in one word. Do the right thing for the right reason. That drives my campaign. That's more words. My entire campaign is built around listening. So if you want one word, that'd be it.
Good, good. You both selected a very fine value. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, our time, I feel, has been well spent, and we want to again thank Jim Evans and Dave Young for their time. They prepared well for today's conversation. They have both represented the city of Orem well, and as you've had a chance to review their body of work that has led up to the next several weeks, we feel tremendous confidence in your ability to select the candidate that best represents your values, your principles, and shares the vision that you have for how Orem can be and the quality of life that it can maintain for the generations to come. For after all, that's what we're working for. Thank you for your time, for being here. And a round of applause for our candidates. Let me make sure I pronounce the names correctly then. Shante, correct? David, is it Nichelle? Okay. Quinn, Tom, and Lene, correct? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our second session here, while we had the luxury of applauding our mayoral candidates for this evening, and we allowed sufficient time for that, we won't have time to do that after each of our 6 candidates for city council. So would you please refrain from clapping after every statement, or we could be here until Sunday when we all have other assignments. So let's with your blessing, would you please accommodate that? Well, welcome. It is another fine evening and a beautiful time to be alive and a wonderful day to be here. We appreciate you each coming and prepared. Again, similar to our mayor candidate questions, these questions come from the residents of Orem, and they have been consolidated because many of the questions were duplicated as they came in. We will give you 1 minute to give your name and tell us a little bit about you and what you feel is unique about the city of Orem, why you are running for city council. Let's begin to my right with Nichelle, and then we'll move right down through Tom. You've got 1 minute.
It was unique about Orem and
Tell
unique
us,
about me.
Yeah,
Okay.
your name, a little bit about you and what you feel is unique about Orem. And we know it's the people, right?
Okay.
So
Me move
perhaps
beyond that answer.
in addition to the people that live here.
Okay, my name is Nichelle Jensen. I have a 6-year-old and 11-year-old in the back row, and my husband as well is back there. I am a Orem transplant, so I'm not a native. And I have grown to love it here. So that's, I think, probably as much time as I should take on me, but something unique I love about Orem is the access to world-renowned recreation. I think
30 seconds.
the mountains in our face, the perfect snow, the biking trails, the natural amenities we have are, I feel we're pretty lucky to have.
Thank you.
My name is Shante Ruiz Zundel. Say that 3 times fast. I am a mother of 2 beautiful girls. I'm married into the family city USA, the Zundel family. Been here for over 30 years. I'm so happy to be a part of this family. I have a law degree from BYU Law. I worked as a guardian ad litem attorney. I represented abused and neglected children. So children are my thing. I love them. I want to protect them. Something
30
unique
seconds.
about Orem, I'm not going to say the residents, but I'm going to say something related to the residents, is they're all like my mother. She has never met someone that wasn't her best friend. And everywhere I go, I make a friend because that's who Orem is. They're friendly. They want to be your friend. I love my daughter. She's hooked on Daniel Tiger, but it's great because everyone's her neighbor, everyone's her friend. And in Orem, they all feel the same way. And I love it.
Thank you. David.
So I'm David Spencer. I've lived here 37 years, married to my wife, Julie, and have 4 kids. How I got into this race 8 years ago was I did Orem Youth Baseball, and the city wanted to take the baseball fields out for parking. So I ran because I wanted to save the baseball fields, and they're still here today. But one thing unique about Orem is we have the Sierra and the Hale, and I support them 100%. And I think that's the sense of community. And one good thing is that we just had our centennial in
30
2019,
seconds.
the city of Orem. So I'm just glad to be here and glad to see everybody smiling. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lene Millett. I have lived in Orem for over 30 years. I grew up just across the mountain in the Heber Valley, and I've seen Orem change the orchards to where we are now. I love Orem. I love the community feel. I have been involved in community service in Orem through the schools, through the city for the last 25 years. And if there's something unique about Orem, that's it. That's how much how our citizens step up to help and to serve and to build our community. And that's something I'm very passionate about.
30
I got
seconds.
involved in running for this race because I've been a resident advocate in our neighborhood for a very long time. And I know how the city works. I've heard a lot of what the people want in Orem, and that's to be heard. And I hope to help the residents to be heard by being a member of the city council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Quinn.
Hello, my name is Quinn Meekum. I have raised my family in Orem, and it's a wonderful place to raise a family. I am a professor of government at Brigham Young University. I've also been a consultant in the private sector, and I've also been employed in the public sector in part of my past career. I've been very involved in the city. I serve on the Natural Resources Stewardship Committee here in Orem. I've been very involved in Orem Recreation and in Utah County as well.
30 seconds.
The thing that strikes me as most powerful about my experience in Orem is the quality of our neighborhoods. We have 22 designated neighborhoods in Orem. I love our neighborhoods. I love the way that we have an opportunity to work together in our neighborhoods. And I do run all over Orem. I bike around Orem and had a chance to see a lot of our parks and great facilities. And I have my very favorite Mount Timpanogos viewing spots in Orem that lighten my soul every time I get out.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tom McDonald. I'm a citizen of Orem, as are all of you. My mother brought me here when I was in 8th grade as a single parent. We came across the plains in a covered wagon. It was a Rambler station wagon. A couple months later, I met my future wife, Kay Mangum. We've been married for a long time. We have 4 children, all grown, and they have grandchildren that bless our life. I've had the opportunity to serve on the city council for a few years, and I think the one thing that stands out for me about Orem is optimism. Orem is voted the #1 most optimistic city in the union. With the possible exception of during election time, I always find that true. I find optimism. I find people going out and helping one another. I am grateful to live here and will continue to make this a wonderful place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause for our candidates as their opening question. Well done. This next question I'm going to read as it was provided to me by a resident of Orem. It is 7 lines long on 12-point time Roman. So bear with me. I thought about condensing it. I may choose not to because of its complexity, but please listen carefully. Each candidate claims to be committed to preserving neighborhoods, but it feels they are actually committed to preserving just their neighborhood. Given there are always going to be imposing necessities that must be accommodated in any city. An imposing necessity might be, for example, substations, fire stations, pump houses, subsidized homes, density. What are you willing to place in more affluent neighborhoods to help preserve neighborhoods which receive a disproportionate amount of these imposing projects? Well, let's go in the same order. We'll begin with Nichelle. I'll repeat the question because that was a lot to digest. What are you willing to place in more affluent neighborhoods to help preserve neighborhoods which receive a disproportionate amount of these imposing projects? Remember that list. They were service-oriented, they were high density, they're subsidized housing. You typically see imposing projects being placed in certain neighborhoods of Orem. What will you do to balance that?
Well, I can't say what our balance currently looks like right now, but I don't know that I think I view what this resident is trying to explain as an allocation of resources in comparison to if what I understand they're saying is that there is typically more of an allocation of resources to a higher density, lower income neighborhood than, let's say, a higher income neighborhood. I view that
30 seconds.
as probably where we should be, meaning higher density neighborhoods with more residents able to contribute into our tax fund are contributing more when we're looking at this from a business and economic perspective, are contributing more into our city's revenue stream than they are draining in the same square mile of infrastructure than a luxury neighborhood. A luxury neighborhood is
Thank you.
draining on the infrastructure with less residents contributing and less businesses and less wealth generation happening.
Thank you, Nichelle. Thank you. Shantae, same question. How do you strike a balance between the more affluent neighborhoods and those that seem to receive a disproportionate amount of imposing projects?
Well, I want to first address that first part of the question where we're all saying we want to preserve neighborhoods, but it seems we care about more of the neighborhoods we're in. And the reason I want to address that is because I went to all the neighborhoods. I've been to every single park in Orem because I have a 2-year-old and that's the life of a 2-year-old. Let's go to the park. And I see a disproportional care for parks. And so that's one way I would want to start with, not necessarily start, but that's one way to do that is the amenities. Make sure that all of our parks are working and functioning and not
30
with wood
seconds.
pallets. Allocating those resources, I think it's about sharing. First, we have to fix high density and what we allow in our city before we start placing high density in any neighborhoods. We need to limit the numbers. We need to fix the parking issues because if we keep what we have currently, we're just going to keep running into the same issues no matter what neighborhood it is in. And we have to spread it out. I know no neighborhood wants it. I've lived in many different parts of Orem because that's what you do when you're a young married couple. You hop, hop, hop.
Yes, thank you.
And I just want everyone to have their fair share and take the brunt they need.
Thank you, Shantae. David.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take a different take on this. On the city council, we go to neighborhoods. People call me all the time and I go and walk the neighborhoods and talk, but it brings me back to on the 1700 South, the Jones property. They wanted to put assisted living in the neighborhood there and the planning commission voted 7-0 to have it go through. And on the city council, we went and walked the neighborhood, the mayor and I, and it didn't fit. So the integrity of the neighborhood, that's what we're trying to keep in Orem. And I don't think we pick and choose where things go, but we need to make sure that we listen
30 seconds.
and that we walk the neighborhoods and say exactly what the citizens want. Also on the water tank, we had a great meeting last night about the water tank and the citizens gave input. And it's very valuable because we listen. We don't live in that backyard and the backyard faces the water tank. And we need to make sure we listen and get it right. Do we want a privacy fence or do you want a chain link fence? So those type of things that we listen. And that's why I'm on the city council, because I want to serve you and I will listen and we'll get things done because I'm a doer.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Lene.
Thanks very much. I guess I'm going to disagree with the premise that we have to put things certain places. I think that we need to listen to the residents, look at where it is, decide if something fits, stop dividing ourselves as neighborhoods. Let's unify. Let's use our community development block grants to help lift neighborhoods instead of tell them that they have to have high density housing because they're an older neighborhood. Let's protect the neighborhoods. Let's help them to provide this affordable housing in the form of single family homes. I think there's a
30
lot of things that
seconds.
we can do to help lift Orem and to just accept that premise that we have to put high density housing in Orem wherever there's a space. I just reject that. I think that I'd rather just go around to our existing neighborhoods and lift those neighborhoods and help those people who feel disenfranchised or whatever they feel like. Let's find out ways to help them and let's build our community and kind of set the narrative for our own community. Thank you.
Thank you. Quinn.
There's no one better than your neighbor to understand what most impacts quality of life in your neighborhood. And so I agree with this point just made that listening to what a neighborhood wants and comes together and says, this is what affects our quality of life. This is what matters to us, is always where we start. Neighborhoods should have an inordinate say in terms of what that neighborhood looks and feels like. People often bought or rent in that neighborhood. They have dedicated their time and energy to that neighborhood, and it matters. That said, we're all in this together, right? We're in this as a city. And
seconds.
the way I would answer this question is that we fix our processes. We need to have longer processes with more citizen input across the whole range of stakeholders so that we don't get surprised by projects that are almost done by the time we get to the neighborhood meeting. We need input from all stakeholders throughout the city, all the way along through that process. And I believe that we have the capacity as a community to come together and reason with each other to find the best solution for our whole city.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Under Mayor Brunson's leadership, who's sitting in the audience, we have as a council taken quite a hard look at parks throughout the city. Shantae mentioned that some of them were in state of disarray, but Hillcrest has been a major project for an area that maybe isn't quite as affluent. And the city council voted, I see a thumbs up, thank you, from a woman I don't know, voted to acquire that school, make it a major regional park. So I think we are trying to get things throughout the city. The city parks are being improved. We spend budget that comes largely from sales tax and some of your property taxes to make this a great place to live. Like Quinn, I'm a biker, swimmer, runner. I'm grateful for the facilities we have in here. I no longer have a 2 or 3-year-old to take to the park, but I do take a grandchild occasionally to the park, and I'm grateful for the quality and the emphasis we place on those in all neighborhoods.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you all for your responses. In deference to going in the same order, I'm going to begin to mix it up a little bit and not let Tom prepare for the answer 5 minutes before the rest. Lene, should the city council have placed a new moratorium on building regardless of potential lawsuits? Let's go to that for you. What is your opinion about the moratorium?
Thank you. Yes, I believe they should have. I was instrumental in the development at North Village District. I don't know if you know where that is. That's 1600 North and 400 West. There was a development there that kind of we were fighting against because it revealed the weaknesses in the State Street Master Plan. One of them being that there's an unlimited height on development. So you could have a building, a high density housing unit, 70 feet tall, 70 feet away from a home. And to me, I don't think that's what those homes signed up for.
30 seconds.
So what we need to do is to slow things down. We need to find these weaknesses that are in the State Street Master Plan. Height was one of the problems. The setbacks were one of the problems. Parking is huge. There's not enough parking in these plans. I think the moratorium was a great idea, that we found these weaknesses in the State Street Master Plan, these weaknesses that don't protect our neighborhoods. And we definitely needed to do that. Sometimes you're going to get sued. There's always two different sides to an issue. And you just have to stand by your values and push forward what you think is best for Orem. And that's why I agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lene. Shantae, will you answer next, please? Would you weigh in on that, your opinion?
Trick me. Yes, they should have done the moratorium. As an attorney, I don't like suits. I've never been sued. Hopefully never will be sued. But sometimes you run the risk. As an attorney, you weigh the pros and cons, and sometimes it's okay to have the risk of being sued. The more important question of not whether we should have had the moratorium, it's done, it's here. The more important question is, what are we, the city council, doing right now? The clock has started. If we just sit around and not fix the problems that Lene was talking about, then we're going to have another moratorium, and then we're going to have an increase of a lawsuit. We need to be taking action. That's the more important question that should be addressed. We should be having those limits. We should be addressing the parking issues. We need to act quickly because 6 months goes by real fast.
Is this a technique you believe that we should employ in the future? A moratorium? Do you feel it's an effective tool?
I think we should be making better decisions and thinking more throughout the future. We should be thinking 7 generations and avoid needing the moratorium. But when we do need moratoriums, yes, we should use them.
Thank you, Tom. What are your thoughts about this?
on one hand, all the good answers were taken by the time you got to me, Curtis. So I'm grateful to be able to go earlier. Not only should we, David Spencer and I voted to do that along with the majority of the council. So we didn't just think we should, we did it. Now, that being said, should a moratorium been used with regularity? I think others of you have heard me say this before. Plan is both a noun and a verb. You plan that, and once you're done planning, it becomes a noun. You have a plan. Then you need to apply the verb terminology and plan again and plan again. Regrettably, cities don't make all the decisions. At some point, developers and the free market system makes that, and they work within the rules the city has set. So we will continue to tweak plans. And in this case, as Lene brought up, a plan had not been looked at as carefully for that particular neighborhood, and we did put a halt. And we are trying to now plan a verb and fix it.
Thank you. Michelle.
Can you rephrase again?
You bet. Should the city council have placed a new moratorium on building regardless of potential lawsuits? And do you think this is an effective tool to utilize in the future?
No, I don't think they should have placed the moratorium on the State Street or any other development on this along the State Street corridor, part of the master plan, because I think, opposition to growth is not beneficial for our city long-term. And in fact, I think it's detrimental. And I think a lot of large businesses would like to make Orem their home. And we lose out on so many opportunities by not being open to adaptation. I think locking ourselves in sort of these regulatory stasis of we will only be a single family home neighborhood places us in this state of atrophy where it's dangerous for our city. We put ourselves in a fragile state. We limit future revenue generation. We are boxing out other residents that are not of our same monoculture from living here. And so I think as a whole, it's not a good move. In the future, I don't do blanket statements that yes, we should always use the moratorium or no, we shouldn't. I just would prefer to do case by case.
Okay. Quinn.
By nature, I'm very, very cautious about how we develop in our city. I believe that over the past decade, we've made some choices that I disagree with and that we could have done a better job on. In contrast to the incumbents here, I have chosen never to take any money from developers because I always want to have an independent perspective and evaluate developments on their own merits without any obligations to my donors.
30 seconds.
That said, the initial moratorium ordinance that was passed by City Council in an extremely rushed emergency meeting with only a couple of days warning was very poorly written. It essentially prevented all signage from being changed. It prevented all kinds of things from being changed. It had to go back and be fixed, essentially, in the next city council meeting. It made the city look like it didn't know what it's doing. It definitely invited lawsuits. And we're going to be sued over it. And I think that we need to always act in good faith with our partners so that people can trust us as a city while I maintain a very, very cautious stance on our overall development.
Thank you. Thank you, Quinn. Thank you for representing your true opinion, even as it may stand alone in that. I appreciate your candor and your confidence in your opinion, all of you. In the earlier session, sorry, David, you know what happened is I wrote down the answer that Tom gave for you.
Okay.
And in my checkoff chart, I had yes, but not a check mark, please.
So I definitely agreed with the moratorium because I was one that voted for it, also with Tom. The moratorium was not against commercial buildings. It was against high density housing. And I think the moratorium is a pause. It's a 6-month pause to make sure we can look at the State Street Master Plan and make sure we get it right. We're trying to do things carefully, but the master plan they showed us a 30,000 foot level many years ago and it looked good. When you get to when the rubber hits the road, it's not good for the neighborhoods that that the encroaches
30
into the
seconds.
neighborhood. So I think that the moratorium is a pause. We're gonna take each district. Shante, we are doing things in the background, so we are doing things, but we're making sure that each district is done right for that neighborhood and for that area. So we are pro-business, but we need to make sure that we don't encroach into our neighborhoods and we have a buffer and we have a height limit. And we don't need high density housing all over State Street. We need to see more commercial buildings.
Thank you for that. David, keep the mic for a second here. Is traffic an issue in Orem? And how are we going to mitigate a rise in traffic and parking issues when we have future developments, right?
Well, I mean, for right now, I mean, the parking issue, you know, back in the day, the city proposed to take the parking from 2.25 on high density down to 1.75. And Brent Summer and I voted against that because if we look at all the high density apartments, they're parking on the street and parking in the neighborhood. So that's something that we need to look at. Parking needs to be raised up. So if you have a 2-bedroom apartment, you can have at least 2.5 stalls. So you don't have cars parking all over the place. What was the other? The traffic.
Mitigate
So
traffic.
with Orem, we have 4 exits and entrances into Orem. You know, Provo has 2 and they're all south. So everybody uses our streets to go to Linden, Provo, through Orem because we have 4 exits and entrances. So I said, you know, maybe we need to have a toll road for those that live in Provo. That we can generate some revenue, but it is an issue and we need to make sure that, you know, on traffic, you know, are the lights lined? You know, at rush hour at 5 o'clock from Provo, you can't even get in a
30
center street.
seconds.
So, you know, that's something that we need to look at our traffic engineers and see if we can't mitigate the traffic because it is going to be a mess because we do have those 4 exits and entrances in Orem.
Shante, what do you think about traffic in Orem and what do you think we can do to mitigate an increase in traffic? Given the growth that we're about to experience, right?
I mean, the growth we have been experienced. I was at a play group with mothers and they were talking about how one of them had to run out and grab her child because, you know, the ball went out and on a 25-mile-per-hour road, they were going at least 40. This is common throughout Orem, people speeding. We need to fix the infrastructure. We need to be working with the city engineers and fixing University Avenue, who's hit every single red light on that street. We need to fix that. We need to have timing better. We need to.
30 seconds.
I'm grateful that the city police department is increasing their traffic off enforcement so that they can do that. We need to do that. We need to look to the future because we're good, you know, with the roads we have needing to expand, plan for that instead of just build and tear down so we can build more because that's just going to cause more problems. We need to be working with UTA in improving the bus systems because I worked with families who had the bus was their reliability and it wasn't reliable. We need to work with other entities.
Thank you, Shante. So Lene, what do we do? Do we keep building lanes? How do we mitigate traffic?
Well, I'll tell you one thing we don't do, and that is the plan to narrow the lanes on State Street. You know, I was told that that's part of the plan of the State Street development is to narrow them in order to calm the traffic. And I don't know what that calming word where that sounds really nice, doesn't it, to calm traffic? But what that will do is that will slow down the traffic. That will create more traffic problems. Right now, we need things that will help facilitate the traffic that we have and not have State Street created into a more dangerous
30 seconds.
avenue. I think part of the issue really is the wisely planned and placed growth. We can't have State Street full of high density housing. That will just increase the traffic. We have to plan for the increased traffic. The development up in my area was going to up in 1600 North was going to add 700 cars a day to that area for 49 apartments. So it really is a correlation between what we allow to be built as far as the increase in the traffic. And what that will do is that will put the traffic into our neighborhoods where our kids are playing. So I think that that's a very important point to consider.
Thank you, Lene. So Quinn, how do you do it? How do you have more folks move into Orem and manage the traffic issues that will undoubtedly come?
Like many of you, I'm very frustrated often getting stuck in traffic in Orem. It hinders our quality of life. There are three things we can do. The first, and probably the easiest way to improve things is to incorporate more adaptive traffic control technologies that incorporate artificial intelligence and understanding where the traffic is coming before it comes to the light so that we can time our lights much differently. Secondly, every person we can take out of a car, put on a bike, put on a bus, walk to the park or to the school instead of driving to the school, takes a car off the road. And so having a diverse set of transportation options will improve our traffic quality in the city. Third, we need to explore the options of another exit off I-15 that caters to Provo traffic rather than forcing everybody trying to get to Provo through Orem. That can be good for our businesses, but it's really horrible for our traffic. We only had a 1% annual growth rate in Orem over the last decade. But if you look at our traffic, we've had a much higher growth rate in our traffic. And that's because of the growth in our surrounding communities. We need to provide better access to those communities.
Thank you, Quinn. So Tom, is timing the lights the solution? If not, what will it take?
Well, timing the lights is certainly part of it, and we do have an excellent engineering group who works on that very issue. As a city council, we've been able to go and inspect their area, and it's a techie wonder above my ability. I'm really not smart enough to own a smartphone, but they do a lot of smart things there. You must remember, though, that State Street, 13 South, Center 8th North, and 1600 North are not city highways. They are state highways. And so we work in collaboration with UDOT. I hate the traffic as much as the most, but I think Shantae nailed it on the head. It's the 25 mile an hour street limits where people are going 40 that worry me more. So the only thing worse than traffic, and I don't like it, is to have no place for our children to find a job, no place for a child to go to have adequate hospital care or other things. And we've been blessed with that. But even if we stop growth in Orem because of the excellent entertainment and retail opportunities we have traffic coming. So we continue to work on that in connection with UDOT on some of the major roads.
Thank you. So Nichelle, what's your take? What's a viable solution?
I mean, none of us have any of the perfect solutions, but I kind of view it as a few things. I believe we are trying to, multiple candidates have said, like, we should add more commercial businesses. We should add, just more businesses to State Street. And then other candidates have said, State Street is a highway and it's a corridor. And so I think, to no fault of any of ours or any of yours, no one has decided whether our main corridors are spaces where we want to create livelihood and generate wealth in terms, meaning restaurants, dining, businesses. Where do we want to spend our time? Or do we want them to serve a mobility purpose and be just pumping traffic through those corridors at higher speeds? And we're trying to make most of our high traffic corridors like State Street and 800 North serve both purposes. And so for that reason, I believe they are a mess. We just need to decide, what do we want these streets to be? What do we want these streets to be? And then plan accordingly. I also believe, diversifying neighborhoods also creates, a 5-minute, 10-minute walkable neighborhood where you have a cafe, a salon in your neighborhood where you don't have to drive anywhere. It takes more cars off the road.
Thank you. Thank you. Of our candidates, do you know anyone that is actively seeking a home, a place to live? Shantae, what's been their experience? What does affordable housing mean to you?
There's affordable housing. Where is it?
What is it? What is attainable housing mean to you?
Wait. I was just focused on the people that are trying to find housing, because the ones that are trying to buy housing are bidding blind and not really knowing what they're getting, but they can get what they get. The people who are trying to rent are kind of doing the same thing. I'll pay this much. I'll go in. I'll wash your driveway. I'll do your dishes. Just let me rent from you, please. Oh, please. And the way we do it is we need to grow our single family homes. We need to grow where people can buy for their growing family. I am so grateful that I have a smart husband who told me 3 years ago, we're buying. I'm like, oh, but that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that families can be here because this is Family City, USA. We don't need to have high density everywhere. We need to have more single family housing available. And I pray for the family members and the loved ones that are trying to find that affordable housing.
Thank you. Thank you, Shantae. Are there, by show of hands in the audience, are there any of you that have recently graduated college age kids that are looking for a home? Are they looking in Orem? Where are they looking? They're looking out of state. So this specific demographic is having a difficult time finding affordable or attainable housing. Tom, how do we address this in Orem, making more attainable housing available?
I wish it was an easy question. If it was, we'd all have the answer. A few months ago, I was asked by Governor Cox to be on the Housing Affordability Commission for the state of Utah. And there are hundreds of millions of dollars available, but many cities, you hear about the tiny homes and they don't want them moving into their neighborhood. We're still trying to figure out how to apply this $100 million that's available to make housing affordable for college students, but even worse than that, which is a recently graduated college student, it's some of the lower paid laborers who have no idea how they're going to live in a home. And I wish we had a quick answer. I'm honored to have been assigned by the governor to be on that commission, but I don't have an answer for you yet. And I'm going to listen well to the other 4 candidates to see if they can give me an answer I can bring to the governor.
Thank you, Tom. And I do appreciate you mentioning our men and women that are working in some of our service and perhaps hourly wage demographic as well, because we certainly want to provide quality of life for them and an ability to I think, live the American dream. Quinn, your previous comments about traffic have me intrigued about your ideas for affordable housing. Can adaptive control and artificial intelligence help us solve some of those attainable housing issues? What do you suggest?
No, that's a different issue.
Yes.
I am in that demographic where I have a college-age daughter. And I would like my children to be able to live in Orem if they so chose. I think it's regrettable that many of our people, our friends, our children that grew up in Orem, to find an affordable house, move to Eagle Mountain or Santaquin or other places that's really quite far away from their jobs and families here. While we can't control many of those market forces that are driving the affordable housing crisis, because this is a very nice place to live, we can control the mix of housing we want to have in Orem. So one of our key strengths is single family ownership of homes. We want to preserve that as a core of our identity. But with 40% of our residents' households renting, if we ignore their needs, if we ignore the needs of young people and older people at different stages of their life who might want a smaller home or might want to rent, then we ignore a very, very large portion of our citizens. And I think that's a dereliction of duty.
Thank you, Quinn. And what I was referring to is an innovative approach. And thank you for your response, Lene.
Well,
So
first,
what does affordable housing mean to you? Like, what is this? How do we get our arms around this?
So I guess I first need to say, I think this is a bigger issue than we can do on a municipal level. This is honestly a problem in a larger scale. Affordable housing. So I met with the Hillcrest North neighborhood, which is just from 8 South to 1000 South, right next to the north of the mall. And those are little, I call them the Geneva Steel homes, because it's a lot of those cinder block homes that were built after they came back from the war. You drive through that neighborhood and you will see affordable housing. And the unfortunate thing is some of those homes are being taken over for high density housing development. That's where the Meadow Gold property is. and where they tried to put the high density housing there. I think what we need to do is we need to recognize there's different levels of affordable housing, and single family homes or owner occupied homes should be the goal. If we can influence that in the city, that's the direction I would like to take the city. I would like to encourage developers to provide affordable housing through home ownership. And I think there's a lot of things we can do instead of taking the homes down to put high density housing. I think there's a lot of things we can do to uplift those communities.
Thank you, Lene. Nichelle. Attainable housing. How do we get arms around this?
Affordable housing. So I think letting the city not stepping in the way of the free market. I think the free market would, if we weren't regulating otherwise as a city, would dictate new creation of housing opportunities and plenty more new units. And with new supply, those prices would go
30
down.
seconds.
I think not only letting the market dictate in that sense would create more affordable housing opportunities. I think mixing up our neighborhoods so that, you know, someone who is ready to take advantage of the high value of their property at this time and turn it into a redevelopment opportunity to create more units would also create this really incremental middle housing option. And I think those incremental options of mother-in-laws, ADUs, are that all of us would love to do to create more adaptability in our lives.
Thank you.
Would provide more affordable housing.
Thank you. So ADUs, accessory dwelling units. Thank you. David?
So I mentioned earlier about the Jones property on 7000 South that they wanted to put assisted living houses there, and it didn't fit the neighborhood. So now today, four and a half years later, they're going to be building 26 single family homes in that neighborhood. So that's what we're talking about, and that it works. But the thing with affordable housing, I think it's a pipe dream. Everybody say affordable housing, but in reality, you need to get the developers, the contractors, FHA financing, and somebody's going to have to subsidize it. Maybe it's 100 million that Tom was talking about, to get together around a table and say, you know what, we need to have affordable housing. And this is the developer, the contractors, and the financing and the subsidiary. They need to get on the same page and make sure that we can build affordable housing. We did it down on Sand Hill Road. Was it the River Horse condos, Mayor River Horse? But they were $150,000 and they were FHA. It was about 6 years ago. And they sold out quickly because they had to be like 60 or 75% occupancy, owner occupancy, and the rest could be rentals. But I think we need to have that plan and get around the table and really talk, because if we don't sit around the table and come up with ideas, we're never going to go anywhere. We're never going to have that kind of housing.
Thank you. Tom, tell us a little, the question is, how much will those homes be? Thank you for that. Tom, is there a scenario where my next question, you begin with the answer of either yes or no, but more importantly, I need to know the why. Is there a scenario where high density belongs as a solution? Yes or no, and why?
Yes. I lived in an apartment when I was first married, as many did. I think earlier comments that we are pretty well tapped in Orem at a pretty high percentage of rental. So the question is, does it exist? And I'm going to grab the NIMBY card that you offered up a little bit previously, Curtis. I think appropriate high density makes sense, supplemented with adequate parking, because it is not fair for our streets, which are already a little dangerous because they're going too fast, to also become parking lots.
Thank you. Nisha, tell us what you think. Is there a scenario and why?
Yes, it's Nichelle. I think, yeah, there are so many solutions. I am a believer in incremental solutions first, but I am also not opposed to high density housing, because and when we say high density, I think frame that in our base level, our standard is single family homes. So a duplex is higher density housing, a triplex is higher density housing than what we currently have making up the majority of our city right now.
30 seconds.
I also think I want to always make room for folks of different socioeconomic statuses. I think, you know, the correlation between there's a connection with apartments being not a part of the Family City USA vision. I just think we're boxing out folks like myself who grew up in a family, in an apartment, and we still, you know, merit a really good city, deserve a really good city to live in.
Yes, thank you for that. Quinn, is there a scenario where high density belongs, and is that in Orem?
Yes, of course, there's a scenario where high density belongs. We have apartments in Orem. People live in them. We need to have a mix of housing for people at different stages of their life and at different stages of their financial situation. The bigger question for us at this particular moment, the end of 2021, is how do we preserve our neighborhoods? How do we preserve our open spaces? How do we keep our remaining orchards? How do we enable those neighborhoods to have the quality of life that they want to have? So yes, there's certainly a role, and we want to have a mix of housing. We already have much of that mix of housing. And given where we are in terms of our 92% of our land is developed, we don't have as much area to develop high density housing as other places.
David, is that true? Is there more room for high density housing in Orem, and why?
Well, we passed a law that no high density housing would be built in residential zoned neighborhoods. So to answer your question, I think we have plenty of high density housing in Orem. We have 42%. And I think as candidate Young mentioned, we need to be able to spread the love to Alpine and Mapleton and make sure that they take their fair share, because if we have 42% of the apartments in Orem, what is you want 50, 60? I mean, the thing is, I think we need to stick to our single family dwellings and try to build those out and make sure we can find some affordable ones. And then on the high density, if they come up to 42%, then let's talk, because I think we have enough high density right now. The answer is no in neighborhoods. Yes, maybe on the thoroughfares, but I think we have enough in Orem. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So Lene, every city is saying, every city is saying we've done our part with high density housing. How does Orem address that question?
So I'd like to see what cities are saying that and look at the percentages to kind of do a fact check on that. I really am very passionate about this. We do have 43% rentals in Orem. We do have a lot of opportunities for apartments. I rented before I built a home. Those opportunities are there. I think another flip side of this is these other municipalities do need to step up. They need to provide the housing in their areas. And you know what? It's actually a win-win for them. As they do, we know that infrastructure follows. They'll have Saratoga, Eagle Mountain, maybe they could get a major hospital there. I don't know, the Home Depot, Walmart, you know, those retail outlets, the retail businesses go to places when they have their increased population, and then that builds their tax base. I think Orem has enough. I think that we've done our share, and I would like to encourage these other municipalities to see the need and help with that also.
Thank you for that. And Shante, take us home on that question. Is there room for this in Orem? Is it a part of the solution going forward?
I hate the word high density because I think of those 6-story buildings that they're ugly to me.
Mhm.
And I do not like them, and I do not want them in Orem, but I do want limited density. I want us to actually limit those apartments and focus on the single families, because I've worked with a lot of families who are living in apartments and they're making it work and they're happy, but also most of the families that I've worked with, they also want that single family home here in Orem. That's the lifestyle that's being sought in Orem. We're not other major cities. And so I think we need to be focusing on finding solutions for those families that way, because that's in Family City USA, that's what they're looking for. That's what I was looking for. I rented and it was great, but I'm so happy I am in a single family home with my girls and my
Thank you.
husband, of course. He's there too.
Thank you. We are probably very familiar with the statistics and the accolades that rank Utah and Utah County among the fastest growing counties and states in the nation. We've received award after award for best state for entrepreneurs, most vibrant middle class, volunteerism. We rank at the top or near the top. We've enjoyed what we would call economic prosperity. We're going to start with Tom, and we're going to come down this way in order. What are our greatest risks to future economic prosperity?
Well, first of all, thank you for sticking with us this long. This is a long evening. I think one of the things that we've also been rated very high on, Curtis, is one of the safest cities in the country, the Provo-Orem area. And I think we need to maintain that with our first responders and police. We need to maintain that because the quality of life isn't any good if there's a high crime. So I think we keep good quality of life by keeping our first responders taken care of, having parks and recreation, and continuing to do those other things you mentioned, Curtis, of entrepreneurship. And what I said earlier, one of the most optimistic cities in the United States.
Thank you. Quinn, what are our greatest risks to economic prosperity?
Well, I'm optimistic about our economic future. Orem lies essentially right between the two largest universities in Utah. They're sources of amazing innovation, amazing young people who come out and work and are interested in strengthening our community. I think one of our risks is that many of our employers, as they grow, will not have enough people to hire. I hope that's not the case, but I think that that's a risk, especially if people have to live 45 minutes away. That's an issue. I do think that we've done a good job in this city of creating a great environment for small business. It's harder as those businesses grow to find office space and to find places where they can continue to grow, and they often move to Lehigh and other places. And we have a risk of keeping some of the businesses that we incubate here. And we could do a better job of finding places, particularly around the I-15 corridor, for them to continue to grow and to stay here.
Thank you. Renee.
So I've been involved in different city issues just recently with the State Street Master Plan. To me, that seems like one of the greatest risks right now to our economic development. As I walked up and down State Street and talked to the business owners along there, they see that as limiting their ability to expand their businesses. I had someone tell me they wanted to add on to their business, and if they wanted to add on more than 20%, they had to tear down the business and move it within 10 feet of State Street. So that's one of the things that I think will definitely be a detriment to the economic prosperity of Orem if we continue to allow those types of restrictions. I think our business community needs to be have limited regulation, let them do what they do best, and let them help us to create an environment where we have a support of small and large businesses that builds our economy and makes us a great place to live and work.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, so the Costco and the mall and 13 South down to the freeways is about 42% of our sales tax. And as Lene mentioned, the State Street Master Plan, it is a detriment to smaller businesses. For instance, the Subway right over here wanted to expand, but he had to go 2 stories, and it's not cost effective. His return on investment wouldn't work. So he didn't do that. So we have to be business friendly and make sure that we're doing the right things so we can keep our businesses in Orem, because I think over the past 8 years, we've had over 400 new businesses move to Orem. Why? Because we're a destination and people want to live here and work here, but we need to make sure we keep them, and we're not a detriment to them as a city council or city government. And we need to be friendly and make sure that they can grow their business, and then we can get more employees and more people in Orem.
Thank you. Well said. Shantae.
Tom, it is hard being close to the end. You take all the good answers, guys. Come on.
You can use it.
But I really agree with Lene and David about this master plan. It is not business friendly. It is so much regulation, so much being put upon the businesses. It's not right. And so that is a solution that needs to be brought up. And having places for people to live, having those affordable places to live, as we talked about previously, is
30 seconds.
necessary because people want to live closer to where they're working. I hated COVID, but I loved the commute for my husband. And so people don't want to spend 2 hours commuting, and we need to be able to, those issues you've been bringing up, traffic, the housing, those are all things that we have to work together to continue to be one of the best places to grow its business, one of the best places to live. There's no one shot, this is the answer, but it's working together, the many different difficulties that we have and
you.
solving the problem, multifaceted.
Thank you. Michelle, what are some of our greatest risks for ongoing economic prosperity?
I think for economic prosperity, some of our greatest, well, what I think is the greatest risk are these, the way that we kind of lock ourselves into this regulatory stasis with things like the moratorium and our opposition to any new innovative developments. I think our city atrophies. I think it trickles into our lack of a workforce. We're experiencing a worker shortage, and our unemployment numbers are the same as before COVID. And so we know we don't have enough people to supply these businesses with employees. It trickles into, not enough sales tax pooling into our city funds that we will continually be depleting. So I think the demand on the allocation of resources without allowing for any new increase of revenue is very scary.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, before we move to the final closing remarks that we will ask each of our candidates to prepare, where they will have 90 seconds. I'm going to vary off script for just a minute. And I think it's incumbent on us to perhaps recognize the efforts of those that have served in elected officials. And as we, as a city, come to some crossroads and elect a new mayor, would it be appropriate if we thanked Mayor Brunst for his years of service? I have had a chance to cross paths with him only recently in the last 8 or 9 months. And I know that he's in the community. He is among the community. We participate in community events together, and he is there representing your city well. He is optimistic about the future of the city, and I'm confident that he's looking forward to passing on those keys of the city governmentship to a new mayor. But Mayor, thank you. Thank you for your contribution to the city of Orem. We will go in a random order, and I'll call you by name. Give us some closing arguments. Talk about your vision. Talk about how you maintain this legacy. Perhaps mention what it is that you see is an important aspect of your contribution as a council man or woman, and what you would bring to that role. Let's begin with David.
So thanks everybody for coming, and Curtis for hosting this debate. I'm running for re-election to protect the integrity of our neighborhoods from high density, and to get things done for the citizens of Orem. I talked about the Jones property and how that worked out, and how we listened to the neighborhoods and what's best for the neighborhood. So we have 26 new homes going down there in the south part of Orem. Ren Whiteman called me the other day. It's been a while, but he had an issue on 2000 South. There's a stop sign there, and there's a mirror that if you go up 2000 South, you can't see. It's a really dangerous corner. So I called the city, and now there's a 3-way stop with blinking lights. So that's what I'm talking about. I get things done, and I'm a doer. I just want you to know that my view of the city government should be The city should provide police, fire, water, roads, and sewer, and that's their wheelhouse. They should not go out into the private sector and do private partner stuff. So just like Utopia, that should have never been done because the private sector does that business, and the government shouldn't be involved in that. I support the Sierra 100%, and Adam Robertson does an excellent job, and that's just a good sense of community. I support the fire and the police 100%. I will never defund anything that has to do with the fire police. They keep us safe. They put their lives on the line every day for us. And they leave their house, they kiss their wife or husband, and they might not be coming home that night because they are protecting the citizens of Orem. And I thank them every time I see them. I want to also have a call out to those that served in the military. Anybody here, any veterans? I salute you. My dad was in the Air Force and fought in Vietnam. One last thing is, I'm proud to be an American. And it pains me deeply that I see people that disrespect the American flag, and that needs to stop. They can protest in other ways, but do not disrespect the flag, because those people, men and women, died for our freedoms. And we need to remember that, because everybody wants to erase history. And we need to remember that those people died for us to be able to sit here and be able to speak and do what we want. I'm David Spencer, and I'm working for you, and I need your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I think it's appropriate that if time permits, that we actually recognize our veterans at the closing of our last candidate. And so keep that applause in your heart, and we're going to do it one more time. Quinn.
This has been a great discussion tonight, and I just want to say how awesome I really think it is that you would come here and dedicate your time and energy to imagining with us on this stage the potential and future of our city. I want you to know, in the words of Orem resident Mary Richards, that you and our futures are deeply intertwined. I want to honor our mayor and city council, city staff, and all of the candidates on the stage for investing in the city in the way that they do. It's just not an easy job. If you, like me, have some concerns about the trajectory of Orem over the last decade, I ask for your support. If you, like me, believe that we have sometimes developed in ways that are inconsistent with our community values, if you're worried about traffic, light, noise, and air pollution, if you value green and open spaces and safe places to interact with one another in our neighborhoods, I ask for your support. If you're worried about what can sometimes be poisonous politics in our city and want someone to represent you who is committed to integrity, transparency, to an independent perspective, to always listening to both sides of the story, and to rebuilding a culture of trust and compassion in our shared community, I ask for your support. I believe that I'm the candidate in the best position to make those changes to our city's trajectory. I'm here because I believe in public service, and I promise never to make it about me or to take myself too seriously. But because your future and mine are indeed intertwined, I pledge to be relentless in the pursuit of an inclusive, high quality of life in this amazing community that we all call home. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's appropriate on their closing statements. We will definitely applaud our closing statements, each one. Shante.
One of the biggest reason I was running for city council is because of my children. I hope they're not giving grandma and grandpa too much trouble. But I want them and all the children to Orem to have the same childhood my husband had, because he had a wonderful childhood and he's a great man. And I want my children and the children of Orem to be like him. I am running for the voiceless. My parents were blue collar workers and they worked themselves to the bone to support 9 children. And I feel like a lot of families in Orem are like that. They can't always go to the city council, but they need city council members who will be their voice. I also want to be a city council member for those who do go to the city council meetings, who do speak up, who are passionate. They're here in this room, but then when the decisions are made, their voices are not emulated in that decision at all. They need to have a voice on the council. Development is happening and development needs to be it needs to be regulated by our city council to make sure it's not taking over our homes. I am the only one with a legal background, and I know 1,000 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean is a good start. I get it. But it is helpful. I understand the law. I can synthesize, I can research. I don't need anything explained to me because I have that experience. I have that. And my job, there was a saying, stand in the shoes of the children. And I loved my job and I loved standing in their shoes. And I want to stand in the shoes of the children, for the children of Orem and for their parents and for their grandparents and for their great grandparents, because we need that. I am a mother, I am a leader, and I'm an advocate, and I'm asking for your vote for city council.
Thank you, Shantae. Michelle.
The people I talked to that I'm representing, I think we're all really concerned about political division in our community. And I think I'm running because I think it's important to harmonize competing objectives. I think it's important to allow, I clearly think differently than a lot of candidates. And I think it's important to allow for a conversation and a dialogue. And that's why I'm interested in running. I think, an echo chamber is a dangerous thing. And if our legislature can't serve as a point of checks and balances, then we are not in a good place. I think, there are no simple solutions. There are no obvious answers. And I am passionate about lifelong learning. I'm passionate about this community. And I believe there's room for everyone here. I believe people have made room for me here. And I want to continue to celebrate our unity as a diverse community.
Thank you. Tom, penultimo.
Thank you very much. I'm always amazed at the presidential elections when the primary candidates just kind of go after each other. And it's a nasty affair sometimes. And then the winner will ask one of the others, often to be their vice president running mate. I'm so grateful that here it's very, very different. I have great respect for each one of these people who are running. They all have a good heart, whether it's the 6 members who are here on the council or the ones who were eliminated in primary or mayoral candidates or those who are no longer running. They have their best interests at heart. And sometimes in candidate season, we don't think the best of each other. And I'm sorry if I've been a part of that, but I think these people are good people. Now, when you govern, you can no longer promise Coke in all the soda machines or Coke in all the water machines, because you find out that Coke clogs the pipes and it's expensive and you can't afford it. But I look forward to continue to working with the 3 members of the council who are here, looking much more relaxed than the 6 of us up here, I might add, and our mayor, who's looking forward to the title former mayor, I believe.
30 seconds.
Thank you very much for the 30-second sound from on high. I didn't get the one word, but I think the one word I would have said that was asked of the mayoral candidates is both real and aspirational, and that's harmonious. We can disagree without being disagreeable, and that's the quality of people who are here on the stage. So I hope you like one of them a lot, and I hope you like me just a little and will vote for me as well. My name is Tom McDonald. I'm running for city council.
Thank you, Tom. Lene, take us in.
You bet. Sounds great. I'm Lene Millett. I'm running for our neighborhoods, our families, and our future. I think that this is a great moment in Orem's history. I think we have a lot of potential in front of us. I really believe that Orem has an incredible future and so much potential, but it needs to be guided. I'm not opposed to growth, but we have to have it well planned and wisely placed. We really need to help build our neighborhoods, help preserve our neighborhoods. I am a firm believer that we need to support our police and our fire. I've met with the Chief Adams and Chief Sanderson this past week and heard about the great things that are happening with our first responders and the sacrifices that they make for our community. And I support them 100%. And I have cousins who are police officers, and I know how hard that job is. So that's one thing that I'm very passionate about. The Sarah, the wonderful parks, our rec programs, these are all great things in Orem that I love that we have those. They need to be fiscally managed and wisely managed. And it's important that we have those so we can build our community. They lift our kids, and which makes our community
30 seconds.
stronger. I believe that Orem is a great city to live and to work in. I think there's a lot of things that Orem is doing right. I'm running because I think there are a lot of things that we can do even better. And I'm excited to do that. I'm Lene Millett, and I'm running for Orem City Council, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been watching the clock. I think we can afford one other off-script acknowledgement with the 3 council members existing that are here tonight. Would you please stand for a vote of thanks and a round of applause? And then, as David eloquently referred to, our first responders, our veterans, those of you that have given more than most for a country that we love and adore, that are willing to stand behind the flag and all it represents. Would you stand for our acknowledgement of gratitude? And finally, another round of applause for our 6 candidates for council service. They've done a fine job. You can tell they came prepared. And I, for one, believe that they spoke from their heart. And I believe that they will represent Orem well, regardless of the outcome. Another round of applause for our candidates. Jody, do you have any closing comments or statements? I'm watching the clock and it's 7:58, and I promised we'd be done by 8. But I can't help but notice we have someone in a sash and a tiara. And what would that mean for us? Could you stand and tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're dressed so eloquently?
So I'm the second attendant in our current Orem royalty. And as a royalty, we work very closely with our city council and our mayor. And so to show support for our current city council as well as our candidates that we'll be working with in the future, I'm here to get to know them as well as pay respects to them and tell them thank you for their continued support in our organization.
Thank you. Well said. Jody, thank you for organizing this event, making sure that we were running well and efficiently.
Thank you.
A quick thank you to Jody. I think that she deserves yeah. I've only met you for a few minutes. Okay. I'll turn the mic to Jody.
Thank you. We appreciate Curtis Blair taking the time out of his personal life and his family to be here with us tonight and do such a wonderful job. I feel like we had some great communication and some great comments and back and forth. And I appreciate the candidates. I appreciate all of you. If you would stay in your seats for just a second, we'll excuse the candidates to go out to the hallway to get to their tables. While they're doing that, I will just quickly update you. You will be receiving your ballots next week in the mail, about Tuesday or Wednesday. If you do not receive a ballot by the end of the week, please contact the Utah County Elections Office so that they can look at your registration and make sure that all your information is correct. Just a reminder, those ballots will come with prepaid postage. You have an option to either put them back in the mailbox. Make sure you do that by November 1st. That's a Monday. That way it can be postmarked. And when I say get it back to the post office, I mean in the post office, not in their box. Make sure you walk it in if you want to mail it that way and make sure it gets postmarked. If it is not postmarked by that Monday, your vote will not count. Best option is to drop it off in our drop boxes. We have one on each end of the city center that at any time you can drop them off in those drop boxes through election day of November 2nd up to 8:30 at night. That's the easiest. So again, I want to thank you for coming. Appreciate all of those that are here and those that are watching online. Thank you. We'll let you go meet with the candidates.